Hello traders, and welcome to this week's session of Mastering the Markets with me, Matt. If you guys have not already met me before, I'm a senior market analyst at PrimeXBT. I'm super excited to be a part of the team and taking you through today's technicals. So today we've got an interesting session that I've actually got planned. It's going to be a bit of a mixture between the fundamental side of things as well as the technicals. We've obviously had a bit of action happening in the cryptocurrency space over the last few weeks, and I'm quite curious to see how price action is going to unfold going ahead. So feel free to ask any questions that you might have today. We've obviously got some prizes running there today as well. So let's dive right into it and let me take you around the platform. So if you guys have not already seen, we obviously have a lot of features on our platform. And the new feature that is quite nice that has kind of come out is around the market research side of things. Now, this was obviously a section that we were doing quite heavily around fundamentals. I've also started to bring in a little bit more technical analysis side of things. So if you go onto our market research page now, you can see we've kind of split this out into three sections, namely your price prediction research, your fundamental research, as well as your technical analysis research. So it's really user-friendly, super easy to use. You can navigate into whatever section you would like. So for example, if you would like to go into the technical analysis side of things and have a look at sort of the chart work that I'm putting up here daily on different sort of asset ideas, etc., you can go through here and have a look. There's some nice and detailed reports that I've been tracking over sort of the last month or so. And if that is something that you're interested in, you can obviously also go one step further, and that is to actually, if you have a look here, I'll just go back. So if you have a look where it says technical analysis, you can choose between what asset type you're interested. So let's say, for example, you're only interested in cryptocurrency, or maybe you're interested in, say, our global market offering. You can go here where it says asset type. You can filter between cryptocurrency as well as global markets. And then obviously that will give up the relevant articles depending on the asset type. Now that's the same for our fundamentals research section too. So if there's only crypto related things that you may be interested in, you can go and filter for this now as well. I think it's a really great feature that we've added in. And obviously if this is a lot of interesting sort of research for you, feel free to go and have a look at that. So let's dive right into sort of the fundamentals. If you go over to our tool section, you can have a look at where it says economic calendar. So we don't actually have too much this week in terms of news events that is coming out. We've obviously got the Euro sort of ECB interest rate decision tomorrow. So that's going to be quite an interesting to kind of look out for. We've got obviously sort of this interest rate decision cut environment currently happening. I'll maybe just move over to my other screen so you can see this a bit better. But if you have a look over here, so if you have a look this week, we've obviously got the ECB rate data. We've had the sort of pound, the Great British Pound CPI data come out this morning. Now that actually came out a little bit lower than forecasted as well. I think actual results came in at around 1.7% versus what was forecasted at around 1.9%. So the sort of Eurozone is kind of seeing this global trend kind of, cooling off in terms of inflation especially. So I wouldn't be surprised tomorrow if we get an interest rate cut. I know that they are forecasting that the ECB will cut tomorrow. So that's going to be quite an interesting one to keep your eyes out on that. And then at the back end of the week, we've got some more retail sales coming from Great British Pound as well. And then we've also got some retail sales coming from the US. So I'm not expecting too much in terms of volatility. Obviously, those ECB rate decisions are going to affect sort of the euro pairs, especially in the Forex side of things. So if you're watching things like euro dollar, those are definitely going to have an impact, as well as say Great British Pound, USD, etc. So have a look at sort of how price action is going to unfold. That's coming out tomorrow. You can see here that we've got forecasts coming in at around 3.25%. So again, kind of that 0.25 basis points, the 25 basis points cut is kind of on the cards. Now, we obviously know that the Fed had a 50 basis point cut last month already. So that's pretty much going to be the talk of the town, I think, for tomorrow. It's going to be kind of to see whether the ECB actually cuts a little bit more than 0.25. And if maybe they come in at 0.5 as well to kind of match what the Fed did. I personally think that they're going to go by 0.25, considering that they'd already started cutting before the Fed as well. So I don't foresee any sort of shocks there, to be honest. But that's pretty much it from the fundamental side of things. So nothing really too intense this week to be on the lookout for. But let's dive right into the technical side of things. So I've been watching an interesting pair, namely both Bitcoin and Eurodollar. And I also wanted to kind of just bring over Ethereum today. Now, Ethereum has kind of been lagging a bit, I would say, definitely in the last few weeks in terms of price action. If we have a look here on the weekly time frame, we haven't really recovered as well as, say, the other altcoins, as well as Bitcoin itself, after we had that Black Monday crash. Now, if you don't remember, the Black Monday crash kind of happened a few months back now already, and that was pretty much due to the carry trade unfolding and unraveling. We obviously had a big sell-off in the Japanese stock market that time as well, and we saw crypto heavily impacted by that, and that was pretty much this move over here. So we pretty much saw quite a big decrease. I think it was about 20-30% over that period. Now you can see that price action has been kind of consolidating quite a lot down in this region of around, say, $2,000 to a high of, say, $2,300. And for me, I'm still quite curious to see if Ethereum is going to actually pick up its feet a bit. Now, we obviously had the ETF launch that also happened, and unfortunately that launch kind of happened before that Black Monday sell-off. So we haven't really seen the flows start to pick up again through Ethereum as much as what we were anticipating. You know, we had obviously the BTC Ethereum ETF launch happen earlier this year. And, you know, that was pretty much a big driver as to why we saw price kind of go into new all-time highs, you know, pretty much pre-halving, which was something we haven't actually seen before. So, you know, if you have a look at the altcoins such as like Solana, for example, we're still seeing a bit of ranging price action. However, we kind of still holding pretty steadfast. However, if I'm looking towards, say, the likes of Bitcoin in these scenarios, you can kind of see how we actually have flipped the switch a bit. Now, if we have a look at what I was looking at last week, it was pretty much something in these areas of interest to kind of hold. We did have this minor sell-off over here. And if you remember back into our sessions that happened about 2 weeks ago, I was quite curious to see if pretty much we would get some sort of reaction out of this area. And we have actually started to see that now. So if you remember correctly, we kind of just took this high over here. We then were looking to see how price action would unfold when we kind of pushed into areas like this. And then, you know, depending on whether we were getting confirmation out of that area or not, we would then see if price action would continue to the upside, right? So if you have if I maybe just remove some of these drawings that I have over here for you, you can pretty much see that we had a nice little short pretty much into this area. It wasn't anything spectacular in terms of follow through wise. However, I was quite curious, and I mentioned this in the articles as well, to see how price action would unfold once we got into this area. And the reason I was quite interested in that is because if I had to mark out this leg here, which is pretty much this internal range here, and I had to put on my Fibonacci tool, right? So you can pretty much see here, price dived into, when I was going through the session with you last week, we were just shy of this 50% level over here, right? So that was why I was quite keen to see if we could maybe get a sort of push back down into this sort of discount region, which kind of aligned with this region over here as my support area. And pretty much once we got that tap at around 59,000, which kind of aligned with the 50% region, and we got as low as around 58,900, we pretty much saw quite an aggressive move. And now that came out actually late Friday afternoon. So over the weekend, we saw some nice price action, and now you can kind of start to see how we are getting a bit more sort of confirmation out of these areas, right? That was why I wasn't too sure if we were going to push higher just yet, because we hadn't really broken this high over here. Okay, so if you have a look here, we hadn't really made any significant progress when we moved higher here. We kind of were just ranging a bit. You know, if I was sort of to be of the opinion that we would continue into, say, new all-time highs from here, I would have liked to have seen a push through immediately and then some sort of pullback before continuing higher, right? However, we didn't see that. Unfortunately, we got trapped in this internal supply area over here, which kind of was acting as my sort of support area too, my resistance area. And we kind of are trading back into this now. So if you have a look over here, right, we are pretty much back into this 68, 69,000 region. And I'm quite curious now to see what actually is going to happen from here. So if we had to deep dive into the technicals of this, and maybe just to give you a bit of understanding as to how I'm doing my write-ups daily. So pretty much in a nutshell, it's quite simple, right? So we've had this descending trend line now that we have broken over here, okay? And if you have a look to the left-hand side a bit more, it's not really too clear in terms of if we had to look for some sort of trend lines coming across here. I would say that maybe something like that would be also of a sort of resistance or barrier, call it that. So if anything right now, we are just breaking out of internal sort of trend lines. We are seeing internal shifts in structure, and that was something I was quite sort of key in terms of understanding with you, or sort of explaining with you guys last week, is that a lot of these moves that we are seeing are internal, right? They're not necessarily clearing new highs. We're not pushing into price discovery, say with the likes of gold, stuff like that, assets like that. We're still stuck within this range, right? So hence why I was a bit hesitant to kind of say, okay, cool, you know, from here we can look to push higher, because we still stuck within this range, okay? And this range is kind of starting at around 63,000, and we're going to this low of around, say, 48,000, okay, 49,000. And anything really in that sort of basket or pool or dealing range, if you want to call it that, is just internal, right? We're just seeing internal moves. Price is kind of, that's why I'm saying it's very difficult to get a grip of price action when it is moving in these ranges, because there's no sort of clear direction. Whereas if you look at, say, for example, gold, if I had to bring up gold, you know, here you've got a chart, for example, where you're pretty much seeing price action just choose one side, and we're not really getting any hard pullbacks. Price is just moving, especially considering after we broke out of this area at around 2,500. That is pretty much what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some sort of aggression. I'm looking some sort of positive move to the upside, whether that be a bit of a fundamental change that kind of supports this theory. That's when we want to start looking for capitalizing on, say, jumping onto these long positions. Other than that, if you're trading within the range, you are really sort of kind of opening yourself up to a bit of risk in terms of, you know, getting stopped out on either side, because you are pretty much trapped within this sort of basket or consolidation, if you want to call it that, right? So I'm going to be quite curious to see how we're going to react when we get into this resistance area now, which we have actually tapped into. And if we can start maybe moving higher than, say, 70,000, because that's going to be sort of the next key psychological level too. We've got $70,000, which lines up pretty much around this high over here. So if we can start to see some aggressive price action to the upside, I would like to start seeing these sort of resistance areas failing to hold and actually turning into support. And if we can start seeing that sort of development, then I would be a bit more confident to see if we can kind of get that ramp up into the end of Q4 and at the beginning of next year, where I think a lot of analysts and forecasters are kind of the opinion that Bitcoin is going to move in that direction, and so will the rest of the cryptocurrency market with it, right? So however, we can't necessarily do that right now. We've got a little bit of sort of areas we need to battle through first, okay? So that's kind of my thoughts on BTC at the moment. So if you had a look now at this, right? So if I had to zoom in a bit more, you can see here we've kind of tapped into this resistance area. I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe cooled off a bit. This has been quite a nice upside run since pretty much Friday. We saw Friday, we've pretty much had, if I mark this out over here from that low, we've had about a 12 to 15% move to the upside, which is quite impressive for Bitcoin at this current point in time, especially, you know, with all the tensions that were happening in the Middle East. A lot of people were kind of the opinion that maybe this is going to affect price action a bit more, you know, and we've also obviously got elections coming up in less than a month now. So I'm suspecting that there will be obviously a lot of volatility coming in these next few months. That's why it's going to be quite important to sit on your hands and just play the moves that you feel are necessary to play. And that's why I kind of preach when we can get into a bit more of a trending market sort of scenario, where if we are pushing into new highs, etc., looking for longs and stuff like that would make a lot more sense, right? So if you look at scenarios like this now, we're pretty much still stuck within this range. And this is kind of what I was looking at Ethereum today, actually, is that if you look at, say, Solana as well as BTC, you're still seeing BTC kind of leading this charge. Now, this is kind of where the cycle theories come into play a bit, where you obviously see Bitcoin kind of move initially within this cycle period. First, it's always the front runner, right? And then you pretty much see the altcoins lagging a bit behind. However, when Bitcoin was kind of moving up this cycle round, we saw a couple of altcoins also actually moving in alignment with it, right? Okay, we haven't had really many altcoins breaking into new all-time highs, such as your big market cap ones like Solana, Cardano, Ethereum, etc. We still stuck within that range, if you want to call it that. However, I would be quite interested to see now if the sentiment flips a bit, right? And what I mean by that, basically, we start to see price action cooling off a little bit more. Maybe BTC runs a bit more, and we see the sort of flow of money and income basically into the altcoins, and maybe we can get a bit of a pickup in the altcoins. Because if you look at things like Ethereum, right, this is lagging a lot since pretty much the highs that we made in March 2024. So almost 6 months ago, we've kind of been stuck down here at these low levels, right? So there is definitely upside potential. However, again, we've got to get through these areas of resistance. We've got to get through these sort of technical points that are quite key, especially considering, the life cycle of cryptocurrency. We don't have these great big fundamentals that we can leverage off weekly, like say the traditional market, right? So we're obviously starting to see that the traditional markets kind of fundamentals are having an impact on crypto, and we can obviously take that into account. However, we don't have the luxury of crypto fundamentals coming out every week that can kind of support the price action. So that's why it's really key to still keep an eye out on the technicals. Hence why I still look at the technicals, because the technicals can help you get a better understanding of what is actually going on. And if you can tie the fundamentals in with the technicals, that helps a lot, right? So those are just a couple of things on my sort of thoughts that I have currently in terms of Bitcoin and the altcoins itself. If you have a look at things like the S&P 500, for example, this is another interesting sort of asset to watch. You can see price action is kind of pushing into new highs at this current point in time. We basically are trading close to $6,000 almost, and that is something we actually haven't seen in a long time. I mean, this is the first time S&P 500 is actually going to be trading at levels like this. But when I say in a long time, I'm referring to price action kind of moving to these new sort of areas where we're not really seeing much resistance or slowdown, okay? And I think a lot of analysts and sort of forecasters have definitely been of the opinion that, in this rate cut environment, we do run this risk of price action cooling off a bit more, right? And that is something I'm going to be keeping my eyes out on to see, are we actually going to get any dramatic sell-offs across the board from, say, the likes of the S&P 500, NASDAQ, or do we continue to trade higher, right? So for example, if you have a look here now, we've pretty much broken out of these highs a few weeks back, and we are pretty much trading back into 5,800 at this current point in time. So these are quite interesting sort of indicators, if you want to call them that. So you've got obviously the stock market as a whole kind of moving up. You've got crypto moving up. You've got the likes of gold moving up. Oil on the alternative side is actually going down at this current point in time. So it's going to be quite interesting, because if things do start to fundamentally ramp up a bit more, especially say within the Middle East, stuff like that, your risk assets are going to be definitely assets to be looking into and trading, because those are assets that thrive really well in scenarios like this, right? So yeah, this is pretty much in a nutshell what I've been looking at. The S&P 500 new to all-time highs, great. We've obviously started to see now that this is where I'm also getting a little bit confused in terms of where price action is, or what price action is trying to tell us, right? So you've got the S&P 500 on one hand pushing into new all-time highs. making tremendous gains past all-time highs. And then you've got something like NASDAQ, right, which is very similar to the S&P 500. And you've got this pretty much trading still below all-time highs. So is this now a little bit of divergence happening between the two pairs? Which one is the leading indicator in terms of, investment thesis? Which one is kind of leading the charge? Obviously, we can see right now the S&P 500 is definitely leading the charge, and the NASDAQ is built more around the tech companies, right? So, are we seeing a bit of a cool off, or are we seeing a bit of a cool off in the tech industry? We know that the things like, say, for example, Nvidia. Again, this week, the US government have now released another announcement saying that they are going to cap the amount of AI chips that Nvidia can sell in Saudi Arabia and Dubai. So these are like small little fundamental things to keep your eyes out on, because previously these have been big price action drivers. So for example, even if you look at Nvidia, right, we've come out just before sort of all-time highs. Kind of looks very similar to NASDAQ if you think about it logically. So you've got one or two big stocks sitting in these big composites that are kind of driving up price. So it's very key to watch how those stocks react, how they sort of develop week on week, and then kind of take opportunity as it comes, right? So that's pretty much in a nutshell of the sort of things I'm looking at. If you have a look at oil today, for example, we kind of failed to really hold above this trend line here. In my previous articles, I did mention that if we start to pop up into some of these discounted areas, say for example, even if I had to mark out this leg over here, right, you can kind of see it just looks like we are printing a lower high in this scenario. So do we continue back down to the downside, or do we kind of form some more internal support over here and then push to the upside? These are key things to kind of keep your eyes out on, right? Especially with the tensions in the Middle East, you'll start to see the likes of commodities like gold and oil really ramping up and price action kind of trading really well. Okay, so those are quite interesting pairs to be sort of keeping your eyes out on. Another one is definitely euro dollar. Now, euro dollar is more from the Forex side of things. I did mention last week that we were in this really interesting sort of scenario where we had broken out of this descending trend line, okay, and it looked like price wanted to move a little bit lower too. But now we are kind of getting into these internal support areas. We've got the RSI indicator kind of suggesting that maybe price might be a bit too oversold in these scenarios too. So these are kind of things that you can kind of tie in daily. I will try to do some more sort of interactive recaps like what I'm doing now. So when you're going through, say, my daily technical analysis research, you also understand a bit more as to why I'm doing and saying the things I'm saying there, and you can understand them a bit better too, right? Now, this is all from a sort of technical and fundamental analysis point of view. So this is all fair and well. This is great to know, but how do I actually use this, right? How do I use this information to come up with strategy ideas, come up with a trading plan? How do I use it to actually execute on positions? And that's what I want to show you today by taking you a little bit more back to the platform. So if you have a look, if you guys have not already signed up an account with PrimeXBT, you can do so by going to our main landing page, really easy to use. And over here, you pretty much will see a summary of my account. This is basically will look the same for you, right? You've got pretty much a couple of options here. So for example, if you are a first-time trader or you've only registered with us recently and you're not really too sure how you can get funding in our account, it's really easy to do so. You can go to our deposit function, and we obviously have a lot of options here, either be fiat or money in the scenario, or crypto. Or if you want to buy crypto directly off your card, that's also okay. So in these scenarios, you'll see over here, I've got USD Tether as well as Bitcoin and Ethereum sitting in my account. And that's purely because I've chosen those options. However, you can choose whatever option you'd like. And then pretty much once this funding is sitting in your account, that will obviously be there for you and available to trade, right? But now remember, you need to make certain transfers, right? So let's say, for example, today's example, I want to go and try and make the most of Ethereum. I want to try catch some upside momentum because I see it's lagging in terms of the other altcoins. I see Bitcoin kind of leading the charge. So how would I do that, right? So you got two options. You can either trade on our CFD's trading platform, or you can trade on our crypto futures platform. Okay, so I'm going to make I've already got a lot of funding sitting in these accounts, but if you want to make a transfer, it's quite easy. You simply just go on the section where it says transfer and you choose the different account. So for example, if I wanted to go trade in the crypto futures platform now, I'll go to the top where it says crypto futures. I will select it. It will pop up this nice UI for you, right? Now, this is the terminal. So this is the futures terminal. Now you can see obviously here from last week, these are the couple of examples I was showing you how you could pretty much execute some short positions. But today we're not going to trade Bitcoin. I want to look a little bit more into Ethereum side of things, how I can execute some positions there and take advantage of the analysis I was showing you earlier, right? So how would I do that? It's really easy. I would need to change the ticker name. So if we have a look here, you've got a whole lot of options that you can choose from. I'm going to choose from Ethereum and I will then bring this up, right? So if you have a look here now, it's short and simple. This is pretty much a nice trading view. So similar to what I was showing you earlier, which is a trading view sort of analysis and charting, etc. We have that also built into the platform, which you can use like this. So if you have a look here, you can pretty much see exactly the same charts that I was showing you earlier. These are just in the default colors. You can obviously change that if you would like to as well. And pretty much, let's say, for example, I would like to make the most of capitalizing on these sort of areas. I would do so by this. So let's say, for example, I wanted to kind of get a limit entry order, right? Because this is something a bit different. So if price is, say, trading below an area that I'm interested in, however, I only want to really execute on it once price starts to break above, it's something we use something called a stop order. Okay, so in my previous sort of tutorials and sessions that I've done with you, I've showed you how to use a market execute as well as a limit order. Now I want to show you how you can actually use a stop order. Okay, and this is important because sometimes you find yourself entering into positions maybe where you're a bit too soon or maybe you're a bit too late. So let's say, for example, I had to draw out my same sort of resistance areas that I had marked out on my trading view chart, right? So let's say, for example, I was looking at this. This was my internal trade, my internal resistance area here. And if you have a look here, this was my sort of internal support area, okay? So if you have a look at this current price action, you can see that Ethereum is still stuck within this range. So maybe I don't want to enter into this position right away. So remember what I was saying to you, sometimes when you're stuck within this range, it can be a little bit more difficult to trade in this ranging sort of price action because price is not showing you one direction, right? And if price isn't showing you a clear direction, it's very difficult to capitalize on the move because you either then counter trend trading and 9 times out of 10, you actually want to be trading with the trend. So this is something called pro trend trading, right? So for example, let's say I wanted to be of the opinion that if price started to trade back into new highs of around, say, $2,800, I would like to execute only long positions once that started happening, okay? But now remember, it's not necessarily the same way in which you'll do a limit entry because a limit entry works in the opposite way. A limit entry is if I'm trading above a certain level and price comes down into a level that I'm interested in, then I want my limit order to be executed on. So in this scenario, I want to do a stop order. So stop is just basically the same thing. However, it's just allowing you to capitalize on positions once price gets to a certain level, okay? So let's say, for example, I was looking at this chart over here and we had price trading. This was, say, our most recent high sitting at about, I think it's around $2,800. Okay, so let's say, for example, I want to only enter there. Okay, so how would I go about doing this, right? Now, I can't market execute because if I market execute now, my market execution is going to be below this level. Okay, so and limit entry, I can't do a limit entry because price has already, say, moved out of, say, lower areas. I'm actually not looking for price to go back down into these areas right now. I'm of the opinion that price might push higher and I want to get into a sort of long position. So how do I do that? Okay, so there's two ways you can do it. One, you can either wait for price to kind of go above these areas. So you can set alerts, okay? So you can use your own personal trading view to set an alert when price gets to that area. which will then give you a sort of notification to say, okay, cool, price has moved above here. Now I'm interested in this area, right? That's one way you can do it. That's maybe a bit more of a safer option because maybe you don't necessarily want to be caught on some sort of whipsaw action or whatever it may be. Another option is a stop order, okay? So if you have a look over here where it says market, or under my free margin, you've got market, limit, and stop. So stop is basically the same. So I want to do a buy stop, okay? Because remember, I don't want to actually sell in this scenario. I want to be purchasing with the market if price starts to break above these areas. So how do I go about doing it? Yeah, I would choose a buy option. I would need to change my cross margin to isolated. I'll bring this margin down. Let's say I want to do it, say around 10x, okay? And then I can also choose the amount of Ethereum that I want to enter. So let's say I want to only enter 0.1, okay? How do I now get this position to reflect on the chart? So when price gets there and executes, it's really easy. So now you can take this level. So let's say, for example, I only want to trade above 2820. I simply just go and change that over here, okay? And now if you've done something incorrectly, the platform will show you, right? So let's say, for example, I wanted to enter buy stop at 2.4, okay? It will now say your order will be executed immediately. Why is that? Okay, the reason is because $2,400 is actually below my current price, and a buy stop order works is that, or the way it works is pretty much if price is over here and I want to buy over here, when price gets there, I will get executed. Okay, so if you want to now have an entry set at a price lower than your current price, it's just going to automatically market execute for you. Okay, then that's basically the same as market execution. So we don't want to do that. You want to have price say at 820. Okay, so then now you'll see, cool, place buy order. Then I say, okay, cool, my buy stop is now set. So if you have a look over here now, you can pretty much see with this green line, it says here buy stop 0.1 at 2820. Okay, so what does that mean? Now remember, it's not a position that's active. It's similar to how I showed the limit entries. It's now going to show an order entry. Okay, so if you click on where it says orders, you might not be able to see it because my face is there right now, but basically just to the right of where it says positions, you'll be able to see it. And then pretty much if you have a look now, I've got my buy stop order. Okay, so this buy stop order will just sit there. It won't be manually executed, or nothing will happen to it, only if price starts trading to that area. So if price starts to do something like this, and let's say, for example, we get here and then we do that, my order will stay the same. It won't get executed, okay? And that's the beauty about this, right? So it's basically allowing you to kind of capitalize on scenarios when, let's say, for example, price just did this, okay? So you obviously know in cryptocurrency, we can get some really interesting days where price will just move 5-10% on a day, and now you've missed your entry execution because it moved away too quickly for you and you weren't able to manually execute in time. Or maybe price moves to $2,820 tonight when I'm sleeping. So these are really efficient ways to kind of set limits, set orders, so that you pretty much just can set it, forget it, leave it, do it, let it do its thing. And then once price is actually in that area, okay, it will then manually execute for you. So it's quite a nice scenario or a nice tactic to use, because if you do get those massive impulse moves to say the upside, and you've got, let's say, a candle that prints from $2,600 to $3,600, you've then missed out on, say, 10% worth of movement to the upside. And then you kind of sit with yourself from a mental perspective. You sit with yourself and you say, oh, well, price might not come back down, so I'm just going to execute now. And then you kind of run these sort of scenarios through your sort of mental trading side of things. And I'll cover this in some more detailed sessions where now you sort of, you wanted to enter 282, price moved past it and it's now trading at 3,600, for example. I want to be in this trade. I want to be with the market in these scenarios. So I'm just going to execute now. However, because you are trading futures, as well as CFDs, you open yourself up to more risk. And what I mean by more risk, okay? Risk in this scenario is defined by where you place your stop loss, okay? So let's say for example, I have my entry set up like this, and I have my stop loss sitting below here at around 2.1, okay? And let's say for example, I leave this position running, okay? So I can't do anything to my modification in terms of my stop loss and my take profit right now. However, if price tags me in, it'll be then the same way I've explained in my previous sessions, where you can go and modify the stop loss and the take profit level there too. So let me show you what this visually looks like, right? So let's say we have a candle that now prints to the upside, okay? And it pushes, right? Let's say you push about another, okay, this is quite a big example, but let's say we push 15% above this level, okay? Now there's two things that might happen, right? And you've probably seen this if you're a trader, if you actively trade like myself, you've probably gone through these same scenarios many times. So now what will happen is you're 15% above the price you wanted to buy at, okay? So in that scenario, you would be at around, say, $3,248, okay? Now, you want to kind of capitalize on this position. So you could set a buy limit, okay? So what I mean by that is that if you have a look at this limit section here, which is kind of what I was showing you earlier, basically if price breaks above the area, and then you can kind of capitalize on the movement if price comes back down and tags you in. But now there's a lot of ifs in that scenario. So what I mean by ifs, well, price doesn't necessarily have to come back down. So you might find sometimes price does this, and then it might miss your limit entry down here, and then it's continued to the upside, and now you've missed the whole move. Then you can't benefit from this move in any way. However, if you set the buy stop limit like this, and price kind of pushes through this area, you will get tagged in this area and it will move further. So this is the one scenario of you've got the potential to get back in the trade by either setting a limit entry. However, you run the risk that if price comes down, it doesn't come down deep enough to the level you're looking at, so you miss out on the entry there too. Or the other scenario you face is that you wake up tomorrow, price has moved 15% higher, and now you want to get in this trade, but you want to market execute. So then you market execute, and now if, let's say for example, you want to run the same stop loss, okay? Now all of a sudden your risk to reward is different. So now if you have a look here, my risk to reward is 0.85, whereas if I had to get tagged in this buy stop entry, it's 1.94. Do you get me? So it's all about playing your sort of probabilities. It's about playing how to kind of manually get into trades in a more efficient manner, a way that doesn't necessarily make you stress that much, that doesn't have as much of, say, a mental impact on you, because these scenarios here will definitely also help you boost your returns, right? And this is a pretty easy example to show you that and how that would look like. So for example, if you have a look now, let's say I even take this entry over here when price moves above and I don't have the buy stops, then I've got to pretty much, to try and get the same 1.95 return, I've got price needs to then trade to say $5,400, right? Whereas if I get in on this level at 2.8, I'm almost making 3.7 return versus the 1.9 return here. Do you get me? So that's pretty much where the power of using these entries and ways to kind of execute positions, it helps a lot, especially if you're playing in the futures and CFD space. You have the luxury of doing that, right? So for example, you know, if you're playing in the spot market, and what I mean by spot market, I mean if you're spot trading. So spot trading is basically you market executing. You can't necessarily put buy stops or sell stops or buy limits or sell limits to kind of trade. You've got to be kind of executing positions from a market perspective, right? You can set limit entries, sure, or you can set alerts. That's another way to do it. However, you do run that risk where you might not get in. So this is something I wanted to show you. I think it's a really nice and easy tool to use. When price action starts to move in that direction, say at around $2,820, you'll then get a notification that the trade is in, and then you would need to go and modify your stop loss and your take profit based on the levels that you're targeting, right? So for this example, I'm happy to leave this 0.1 buy stop here, and if it gets triggered, I will then get into the position and I can go and modify that as it is, right? So that's pretty much in a nutshell of what I wanted to show you today. If you guys didn't know already, we also have this really cool feature where you can collect rewards and bonuses. So next to the deposit section over here, you can pretty much see where we've got all the different types of bonuses you can get for the amount of volume you're trading. So for example, if you have a look here today, I can claim $20. This will then go into my rewards balance. And if I want to redeem these rewards, I can then choose. So if you have a look here, I've got actually $25 that I would like to redeem. So how do I get that back? I simply click on redeem rewards and I choose the account that I want to go into. So do I want it to go back into my futures platform, or do I want it to go into my CFD trading platform? Let's say, for example, I want to do this. I then choose the max amount. I go confirm, and that money is then gone through. Okay. So that's pretty much in a nutshell how that works. It's really easy. We also have some nice welcome bonuses that you can come and claim. Obviously my welcome bonus has now expired, but if you're a first time user, that is all here for you too. And I also wanted to quickly just go over one last thing before we finish today's session. And it was a question I had from someone last week that said, how do I close positions? How do I modify positions, right? And basically, I think what the user was trying to ask me is, if I'm in, say, one lot position, how do I partially close some of that position? Okay, so I can actually show you now, if you are on the stream, pretty much how to do that. So if you have a look here, I'm just going to quickly jump over onto where it says market execute. So if you have a look here, I'm just going to quickly market execute. Let's say I want to market execute 0.1. This basically would now show that the position is running, and I am now running in this position. And if I want to go and close this trade, I can do so in a couple of ways, right? So let's say, for example, I want to close the position fully. I would then go close position. However, let's say I want to modify this a little bit. Then you would need to kind of think about it in two different ways, right? There's two different ways in which you can do it. So in this scenario, I've actually entered into 0.1, okay? And if I want to close this position fully, I would just simply do it like that, okay? However, let's say, for example, you were looking to kind of, you know, maybe you want to split your risk up a bit, right? So the way in which you can split your risk up is you can split up your orders, okay? Especially on the future side of things. On the CFDs platform, you can actually close half of your position. You can modify, because it's the way in which CFDs are designed. But the future side of things, you're going to have to do it a little bit differently. So there I showed you pretty much you would enter into a position of say 0.1, and then if you wanted to close it, you would have to close the full position. However, if let's say, for example, I wanted to enter into 0.2 worth of Ethereum buying, why don't you just split up the position? That's what I would do. So basically what that means is, instead of me going in at 0.2 fully, I would just go in at 0.1 and 0.1, okay? So basically what that means is I now give myself two entries, okay? I give myself two entries of 0.1. And let's say, for example, I wanted to get out of this position again, you can pretty much do that. And if I want to say modify one in a little bit different way, I can do that. And if I want to take profit in a different way, you can also do that. If you want to do this on the CFD side of things, it's a little bit different. So if you have a look here, I'll just quickly pop over onto Ethereum, or even let's say, for example, we're just doing it on Eurodollar. It's the same for all. Let me try find Ethereum quickly for you on this section. Okay, so if I bring Ethereum up here, let's say, for example, I was in a 1,000 lot. The max is 500 in the scenario. So let's say I wanted to do 250. Okay. So let's say I wanted to sell 250 worth of contracts right now. I click send order, I go confirm, and it's gone through. If I now want to close this position partially, I would then need to go to where it says exit, okay? And then if you have a look here, it says amount to close. I don't know if you can see that, but where it says amount to close over here, I'll try to zoom in a bit more so you can see that. You then can modify. So if I want to close, say, 125 contracts out of 250, that basically means I'm closing half. Then I would just go in here and modify that to 125. It will then say amount to close 125 out of 250. I then go close the position and I go confirm. Okay, now I'm out of that order by half and I still have another half entry running. So that's pretty much how you can do that. And if I want to close this position fully, I would then just go to where it says, I'm gonna have to zoom out a bit here. So if you have a look here where it says the exit button over there, I can then close the remaining 125 contracts and go confirm. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That's what I wanted to show you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's session and you can make the use of stop orders a bit more now in your trading plan. If there's any questions around the technicality side of things, maybe there's something you want me to explain on the platform, how to use, feel free to share it in the chat. I'll collect some of these questions and then I'll try to bring them into the next session, and hopefully these can help you guys a bit better with your actual trading plan and your day-to-day trading. But for today, that is going to be the end of today's trading session. So thanks again for joining and tuning into this week's session. I will see you guys next week and trade safely throughout the rest of the week. Enjoy the rest of the weekend and we'll chat again next week.